It may seem like an impossible task, but we're up for the challenge. Welcome to MojoPlays. Today, we're going to be counting down the top 50 most influential games of all time. This list is based on their influence on the industry and their lasting appeal. For this episode, we're counting down entries 50 to 41. Let's go.
Number 50, Quake II. Not originally intended to be a sequel to id Software's 1996's hit first-person shooter Quake, 1997's Quake II is part of the foundation that makes up the modern-day shooter genre. With a new 3D engine, Quake II took advantage of modern hardware acceleration and came with a variety of graphical features, like 3D models and advanced lighting. The end result was hard to argue against, as the game looked absolutely amazing for its time. Leaving behind the gothic environments of its predecessor, Quake II went for a gritty, gunmetal science fiction setting complete with cybernetic enemies and alien environments. The game made efforts to tell a deeper story and establish a world that was connected and linear, while most importantly, feeling like a real place. But telling a story wasn't Quake II's bread and butter, and in the end, neither was the entirety of its stellar single-player experience. It was the multiplayer that cemented the game as one of the best and most important first-person shooters of all time. Still being played today, Quake II's multiplayer quickly grew and became the go-to game for the most competitive of PC gamers. Co-op and Capture the Flag were fun enough, but it was really the free-for-all and one-on-one deathmatch modes that kept players coming back. This was the game that set the standard for fast-paced and visceral arena deathmatches, an experience that would be replicated many times over, but very rarely matched. Number 49, Assassin's Creed. It's not hard to feel a little skeptical when the term historically accurate comes up as a descriptor for a given game, but something truly was in the air when Assassin's Creed appeared on the scene. Its promise of one man's personal quest to redeem himself dovetails nicely into the game's central draw, that is, the unrestricted roaming across the rooftops and streets of various cities like Acre and Jerusalem. The detail and scope of these explorable environments would help shape one of the most successful and expansive franchises in gaming. This, coupled with elements like scattered collectibles and a focus on intricate combat, would end up being something of a template for later open-world games, especially those produced by Ubisoft. Assassin's Creed drew much attention and praise for its sheer attention to detail and cleverness in presenting game tropes as part of a larger future-set narrative involving DNA-based memory experiences.
Do not speak, not another word.
Number 48, World of Warcraft. Picking up 4 years after the last installment of the Warcraft series, World of Warcraft was a shift in style and presentation that no one quite expected. The army construction and resource gathering were tossed aside, replaced with interconnected quests, companion pets, and the prospect of professions. Stunningly, this was also the point at which Warcraft as a series clicked for many people. The game let players customize an avatar and align with either the Alliance or the Horde, partially dependent on which race is selected. Exploring the big wide world of Azeroth was now possible, leading to the discovery of intriguing story turns and memorable characters.
It is time to forge our own path, my friend.
Jobs could be picked up at one's discretion, and dungeons could be cleared alone or with friends. Blizzard sought to take their existing franchise and turn it into a thriving ecosystem of player-driven activity. It can be safely said that they succeeded, if the more than 10 million subscribers at its peak and equally impressive lifetime sales are any indication. The systems it pioneered, like reduction of downtime after deaths, proved valuable innovations for MMORPGs, helping ensure that World of Warcraft would dominate its corner of the game market for years to come. Number 47, Halo: Combat Evolved. Xbox Live was just emerging as a potential place of growth for gaming. Shooters were past the point of dungeons and tight corridors, but hadn't quite reached the peak of arena-style combat or linear narrative focus yet. It was a time of limitless possibilities and no clear goalposts. Then Bungie, known for their Mac OS-based Marathon series, came along and produced Halo, which would bridge the gap between old and new in a big way.
Am I right, Marines?
Sir, yes, sir!
Damn right I am.
This FPS focused on a major skirmish in a war among the stars. You are the Master Chief, a powerful soldier among several humans that crash on a mysterious ring structure while fleeing for their lives. Your adversaries are a number of alien races that make up the Covenant Empire, which seeks destruction of humankind and control of the galaxy. And across 10 multi-part levels, your task is to shoot, dodge, run down, and bash into oblivion both the Covenant's infantry and the relentless parasite race known as the Flood. Combat Evolved made commonplace certain elements of shooter design, such as a 2-weapon limit, though its major contribution to game canon was raising the bar on how expansive and engaging console FPSs could be. In broader popular culture, Combat Evolved was the linchpin of machinima, a creative movement repurposing game engines for short films or series. Number 46, Unreal Tournament. Pure, straight-to-the-point combat has its place in gaming. There's no need to debate that. A game that contextualizes its violence and gives it weight may do a great deal better, but if the shooting is good and the battles flow fast, it's by no means the end of the world. This was the case with Unreal Tournament, an arena-style shooter where backstory and context are kept to a minimum so as to get to the bloody gunfights faster. It's a world where tensions are high and violence is kept in check through the implementation of murder tournaments. In terms of reasons to exist, this is remarkably solid and upfront about its intentions. The meat of the game is in the fighting, which consists of combatants riddling one another with lead, lasers, and the odd explosive projectile. Its indulgence in hyper-stylized violence was matched by Epic's savvy when it came to AI programming and level design, and brought attention to the then new Unreal Engine, which has since become a backbone of the industry. The gore-splattering death matches and competitions in today's multiplayer shooters do not exist without Unreal Tournament establishing the groundwork. Even beyond the momentary popularity of the arena shooter, Unreal helped to normalize the concept of multiplayer-oriented games with very limited single-player content. Number 45, Bioshock.
You're special. You were born to do great things.
A man, a lighthouse, a city. The elements that would come to typify Irrational Games' most widely beloved series began here in 2007.
I chose Rapture.
Bioshock arose out of the blue, seemingly intended to act as a spiritual successor to System Shock, but taking on a life of its own before long. To say it honors those past games' legacy while effortlessly charging into new territory is putting it lightly. Bioshock throws its audience headfirst into the dilapidated horrors of Rapture, an apparent utopia under the sea that has since gone horribly awry. The filthy halls, the denizens driven to mania by a kind of substance abuse, everything conveys a sense of a bygone era that maybe never quite was. Those familiar with the game know its most powerful moment, the scene which turned heads back in the day for its sheer bravado. Yet the truly remarkable part is that in the grand scheme, that sequence is but a small part of a much larger revelation regarding player agency and the nature of freedom. In this way, and others, Bioshock championed the cause of gaming as a philosophically minded medium, concerned as it was with deconstructing objectivism as originally conceived by author Ayn Rand. Number 44, Wasteland. Post-apocalyptic settings in gaming, particularly in RPGs, didn't emerge from nothing. A long tradition of stories set after the end of civilization exists. Films like Mad Max and The Last Man on Earth, literature like A Boy and His Dog, it all served as the inspirational background for one Brian Fargo, co-founder of a little company called Interplay Entertainment. At Interplay, Fargo would first explore the themes and concepts of the post-apocalypse in making Wasteland, which had players commanding a 4-person squad across the southwestern United States. The squad, representatives of the Desert Rangers, protectors of the innocent, march forth trying to do as much good as possible. Where Fargo and team's savvy lies is in their willingness to go to the logical extremes that the scenario dictates. The world of Wasteland is a cruel and unforgiving one, full of harsh truths, no-win situations, and lots of death. After Wasteland, gamers clamored for more titles that tested their mettle while also exploring the existential dread of a post-nuclear society. Wasteland itself is the spiritual predecessor to Fallout, which expanded upon the given material and proved successful enough to support its own distinct franchise. Number 43, Metroid. Next to straight-up platformers where jumping and running are your primary means of interacting with the world, the action platformer was among the most reliable of game templates for Golden Age designers. The consistent theme of "there's a bunch of bad people or creatures, shoot them until they die" could serve as a baseline assurance of quality in case experimentation with style and broader design didn't quite hit the mark. Metroid, then, is what happens when such a concept is taken to a logical extreme, having the player take on hostile aliens as armored bounty hunter Samus Aran, and consequently elevating the entire surrounding genre. Beating Samus's targets, the cruel space pirates, means fully exploring the caverns and deadly corridors of the planet Zebes. There were weapons and power-ups to be found, hidden in tight corners and used to advance further into the darkness of Zebes. The confidence with which Metroid presents its grim science fiction setting and player-guided plot progression helps explain why, even now, the game is still a visible influence on modern developers. Nintendo had never quite put out a game as emotionally distant yet compulsively playable as this, what with their more public embrace of fantasy and adventure. Aside from being a potent example of successful mood building in gaming, its multiple endings based on completion time also bear responsibility for the popularity of the speedrunning scene. Which brings us to the final reason Metroid is so significant, the reveal that Samus Aran is a woman. To have a character who is the embodiment of cool detachment and eternal professionalism turn out to be female was a big deal. It meant we were one step closer to fairer representation in games. Number 42, Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
Die, monster! You don't belong in this world!
While Metroid and its sequel Super Metroid set the groundwork for the Metroidvania genre, Castlevania Symphony of the Night refined it, opting to move away from the linear adventure that had come in titles before it, in favor of a maze-like castle to explore and implementing RPG mechanics to maintain player progression. Symphony of the Night was a landmark title for the Castlevania series and is still widely considered to be the best. By focusing the game around the son of Dracula, Alucard, as opposed to a member of the Belmont clan from previous titles, directors Toru Hajihara and Koji Igarashi were allowed more creative freedom with the abilities this half-vampire could wield, while at the same time telling an intrinsic story involving the doomed fate of his mother and subsequent disdain for his father. Though initially bombing at retail due to the public's interest shift from 2D to 3D games at the time, a combination of word of mouth, critical praise, and subsequent re-releases, such as being featured in PlayStation's Greatest Hits line, helped it become one of the best titles on the original PlayStation.
But enough talk! How about you?
Number 41, Computer Space. When Nolan Bushnell and Ted Dabney teamed up to create Computer Space, the goal was simply to make a coin-operated spiritual successor to 1962's Space War. Much like what came before, Computer Space was fixated on a dogfight in the depths of space, though here it was a battle between a player-controlled rocket and two aggressive flying saucers. An adequate enough premise, it'd be seen as unexceptional by today's standards. Timing matters though, and in 1971, it was huge news that a computer game could be played on a cabinet. Computer Space was the first arcade game, and so it bears responsibility for a lot of the most enduring design aspects in gaming, period. The game was score-based, having you avoid enemy fire whilst getting as many hits on the saucers as possible. Even the hardware design is familiar. Bushnell and Dabney opted to create their own tech to run the game, paving the way for distinct arcade cabinet variants. Though the initial reception of the game was a bit tepid for the publisher's tastes, Nutting had wanted to match the commercial success of their earlier game Computer Quiz, it still made more than $1 million US. Satisfied with how Computer Space turned out, Bushnell and Dabney opted to focus entirely on game development and incorporated syzygy engineering in 1972, naming it Atari in the process. The rest, as they say, is history.
Check out these other great clips from MojoPlays, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.